Welcome to our New Year's Eve event, This Is My Story. We're super excited that you guys are here and ready to hang out with us. Today we're going to look at how to write a better story with our lives and have fun and bring in the new year together. So today we ask you guys to do 3 things to make your day more enjoyable and memorable.
Number 1 is show up. We have a day full of memorable experiences and activities for you, but you got to show up to experience it.
Number 2, do it with friends. Whether you're at home on a FaceTime call or with a small group of people, it really is more enjoyable if you do it with other people.
Number 3 is eliminate distractions. Put down the video games, turn off your phone, and engage with the material provided.
Today is all about learning how to write a better story with your life. And Ashton, I'm really glad that you're here. I really think you need this.
I have actually a memory of all the stories that Kenzie told in her life, and 90% of them collectively own up to watching Netflix and The Bachelorette. I love The Bachelorette.
The only stories that you tell are like, I worked out today, or I'm reading this new book.
This job interview, you're like, yo.
So doing.
Speaking, you've only worked one job.
Because I have a job.
Well, yeah, you have a job and you watch The Bachelorette.
Oh my gosh.
No, that actually makes it worse. Never mind.
Do you remember the time that you went bald? Not your finest moment. Because you've told some not good stories.
I cut my finger open at work. So that's a pretty crazy story, I guess.
The only good stories you have, they're not even that good.
So like when you're old and you're sitting with your old friends and you're like, dang, because people's moms are going to be watching this and we don't want you to tell bad stories.
Like Ashton.
Like Kenzie has been for so long.
No, I draw the line there. I draw the line there.
I sat in butter once.
I got up early for this. Yep.
Dream on.
So you can't commit. So how is that a commit?
I can also not commit to relationships, guys. We lived a few bad stories in our lives, and we lived a few more so you don't have to.
Selfie tattoos.
Contemporary cuisine. Professional spice tester. Oh, every time. Cooking ham with a firework.
If your life were made into a movie, would anyone want to watch it? I mean, would anyone pay money to watch it? Would you? And if it's not worth watching, how would you write a better story? I mean, when I was in high school, I was writing an epic story with my life. I was a funny, athletic teenager who loved to volunteer at church. I was mentoring about 15 middle school guys over the course of 4 years, helping them grow in their character. I was taking these bold steps to live out my faith. I was rallying the entire school to show up and cheer on our sports teams, even though they were terrible. I mean, there were so many hard days, but honestly, those hard days just made the great days that much more meaningful. I mean, I could see who I was becoming, and I was so proud of that person. But when high school ended, and my friends moved away, and I was thrown into this new life, it was like my story just fizzled out. It was like I was 20 minutes into this 2-hour movie and the hero had already defused the bomb, and then they didn't know what else to do, so they just sat on the couch and ate Cheetos. Like my life had just stopped being worth telling. I would wake up with this overwhelming feeling that my life was meaningless. And you see, what I've learned is that my story is actually most people's stories. Except I was fortunate enough to have lived the epic story that I lived for so long. And you've probably felt this too. I mean, the feeling that life is meaningless, that there has to be something more, something better than the life you're living right now. And I believe that what you're feeling is actually God's voice telling you that you've given your life up to fate. That instead of taking control of the story your life is telling, you've given the pen over to fate, and you're letting fate decide what direction your life will go. And fate is a terrible writer. So today what I want to do is I want to help you take the pen back and start writing a great story with your life. I'm convinced that the best writer to help you write a great story with your life is Jesus. I mean, we have literally rewritten history around the story Jesus told with his life. I mean, everything before Jesus we now say is BC or BCE. And everything during and after Jesus is now AD or CE, right? I mean, your school year is adjusted based around Jesus' birth and death. I mean, Christmas and Easter. And you see, not only did Jesus live a world-altering life, a world-altering story, but he also invited other people to do the same. I mean, he invited 7 fishermen who were just trying to feed their families to become 7 of the 12 disciples, guys who would eventually influence the entire world and change history. I mean, some of the greatest figures in modern history, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, they all started as nobodies, but chose to live their lives based on the story of Jesus. And they changed the world as we know it. Fate is a terrible writer, but Jesus is a phenomenal writer. And there's actually a very simple process, a framework that even Jesus followed to write this incredible story with his life. And today, all of the greatest books and movies and songs and stories, they all follow this same framework that Jesus used to live the greatest story ever told. And it's the same framework that Jesus actually invites us to live as well. And here's the framework. A character who wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. That's it. See, every great story follows that framework. And I believe that with Jesus' help, it'll help you write a great story with your life too. So let's start at the beginning of this framework, right? A character who wants something. A character who wants something. Now, in every story, there are 4 basic characters. The victim, the villain, the hero, and the guide. And I'll tell you right up front, Jesus is not interested in you playing the victim or the villain, okay? But he is very interested in helping you become a hero or guide. And this is good news, but there's also bad news. Because odds are, right now, you're living as the victim or villain. So let's talk about it. Let's start with the victim. The victim is the character in a story that nobody remembers. I mean, these are characters who just aren't telling a good story with their life. They're letting life happen to them. To put it maybe a little bit differently, these are the characters who've given their pen to fate. And because they have, they wander in the background, living stories that nobody wants to watch or follow. We see almost every person on this planet is born as that character, as the victim. In fact, odds are that's the character that you are playing right now. And I'm guessing that about you because this is the character that nearly every high schooler chooses to play. But don't worry, because there is a way out. You see, every victim will either stay a victim, become a villain, or choose to become a hero. So let's start with the villain. The villain. Now, the villain is the character who brings like chaos and hurt and destruction into the story. I mean, simply put, the villain is a victim who makes other people victims too. Now, a lot of movies have the villain as this blatant bad guy who knows that they're the bad guy. But in real life, that's not usually how villains look. Most people who play the villain in the real world don't actually know that they're the villain. They actually think that they're the good guy, which begs the question, how do you know if you're playing the villain? Well, the best indicator is to look at the evidence of your past. I mean, do you have a trail of people who used to be your friend, but you outgrew them or you got into a fight with them, so now they're not your friend anymore? Is there a pattern of people in your life being hurt and wounded by you without any resolution or healing between you and them? Do you struggle to admit like when you're wrong or say sorry in any kind of like genuine way? Are your thoughts and prayers consumed with a focus on yourself? Do you bully people? I mean, what does the evidence of your past say? Now, the good news is this, that if you answered yes to any of those questions, which most of us will, you can still change your story. I mean, that's what Jesus is all about. Jesus finds people right where they're at, even as villains, and he transforms them to become heroes. So let's talk about the hero. Now, the hero is the character who wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. Our framework is all about becoming a hero. The hero is the one who lives out our framework. The hero's story is the one that we want to watch. It's the one that every movie follows. It's the story that I want to help you start living. Now, before we dive deeper into the hero, let me just talk to you about the last character, the guide. Now, every hero needs a guide. The guide is the character who gives wisdom and direction to the hero. The guide like sees within the hero what the hero doesn't see in themselves. The guide is never the focus of the story, but they're the character who helps the hero tell a great story. So you think about guides in the movies, right? This is Yoda for Luke Skywalker. This is Haymitch for Katniss Everdeen. This is Dumbledore for Harry Potter, right? Without the guide, the hero will never do what they were meant to do or become who they were meant to become. So here's my invitation to you. My invitation to you is that you allow Jesus to play the guide in helping you tell a great story with your life. So let me ask you, what character are you playing in your story right now? The victim, the villain, the hero, or the guide? I mean, who are you really? Now, it's great to want to be the hero in your own story because I think that's who God designed you to be. But don't be too quick to think that you've already drifted into already becoming a hero, okay? And especially if you've been letting fate write your story. You see, we all need to get honest about who we are really. The good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, in fact, you can't actually become the hero until you get honest about who you are right now. And here's why. Think about like your favorite movie. Now think about the hero. And think about who that hero was in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Now think about who the hero was in the last 5 minutes of the movie. Same person, very different character. I think about like a movie like Star Wars. I love Star Wars. When we first meet Luke Skywalker, he's a whiny farm boy who's never left his home planet. I mean, he has these dreams of joining the rebellion and fighting the Empire, but is too poor to leave, right? And he has no fighting skills. Yet at the end of the movies, he's a Jedi master who's resisted turning to the dark side. He's taken down the Empire and he's trained to the next great Jedi, right? See, every great hero has to go through this transition. In fact, there's actually a phrase to describe this kind of change in the hero from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. It's character transformation. And you see, Jesus is all about character transformation. But we'll talk more about character transformation in session 3. So for now, let's start where every hero needs to start, somewhere more basic. This is something that's going to be a little bit more internal, which is why most movies have a really hard time showing this. But books tend to be great at explaining this starting point. It's called the hero's aspirational identity. To put it a little bit differently, it's simply who the hero aspires to be like. I mean, to save us a little bit of time now, I'll just let you know that usually the hero aspires to be like their guide, which is kind of funny actually because the guide always believes that the hero can do greater things than they ever did, right? In fact, even our guide, Jesus, believes that we can do greater things than he did. In John 14:12, Jesus says that exact thing, that you will do even greater things than what Jesus did. But in order to do greater works, you need to listen to the wisdom and invitation of your guide, to become the version of yourself that the guide knows that you can be. You see, if you want to tell a great story with your life, you'll need to get honest about who you are right now. And then be open to letting your guide, Jesus, speak into who you need to become. This is your aspirational identity. So, who is the guide inviting you to become? Now, every great story starts with a character, right? But great stories aren't about a character and how they change. They're about a character who wants something. See, every hero needs a mission. Every hero needs to want something. And this is where most people stop telling a great story with their life, because most people are just too vague or shallow with what we want. I mean, most people want to graduate high school and go to college and get a degree and then get a job and maybe get married and have some kids, right? And then retire at age 65. Now, that's not a terrible story, but I'm definitely not gonna pay money to go see that story in theaters, right? And quite frankly, I think God created you for way more than that. I mean, Jesus did miracles. I mean, he fed the hungry, he cared for the poor, he healed the sick, he began a movement and inspired the entire world. And yet, he says that you will do even greater things than what he did. I mean, you were created to be on a mission, to want something that's greater than yourself. And that's what great stories are made of. And that's what you need if you want to tell a great story with your life. So, what do you want? Now, odds are you probably actually don't know what you want, which again is probably a really good indicator that you have not been living as the hero of your own story. So, let's fix that. How do you figure out what it is that you actually want? Well, it's actually really simple. Identify the problem. Well, what problem? Any problem. That's the beauty of it. See, when you look at the world around you, what problems do you see? I mean, what problems do you face personally, or do the people that you care about? What do they face? What problems are they facing? What problems do you feel a burden for? You see, in high school, I thought it was just plain wrong that fans would pay money to go to a football game or a basketball game, and they'd sit in the bleachers and not have any fun. So I wanted something more for myself and for everyone else at those games. So, since the cheerleaders weren't really doing much, I started painting my own face and wearing our team colors and leading funny chants and getting people to crowd surf, right? I had a problem and I needed to solve it. See, as hard as it was to see my friends getting drunk on the weekends, I thought it was just plain wrong that they didn't have anyone there to make sure that they were safe. And I wanted that for my friends, so I showed up. I didn't let people drive home drunk. I drove for them. If someone drank too much and passed out, I made sure to roll them on their sides and check in on them throughout the night. I mean, if someone was about to get into a fight or do something stupid, I'd step in and just redirect them somewhere else. I saw a problem that I needed to fix. Right? There was this group of middle school boys at our church that constantly caused problems. And most people saw them as a lost cause. And I thought that was just plain wrong. And I wanted them to know that someone believed in them. So I spent 4 years mentoring them and calling them and encouraging them and showing up week after week to let them know that someone cared about them. See, those are some of the problems that I saw, but what about you? What problems do you see that are bigger than yourself? And how do you decide which one of those problems to do something about? I mean, it's not enough to simply want something. You actually have to do something about it. And that is where a great story truly begins. I mean, 2 questions that have really helped me narrow in and decide what problems I should be doing something about. The 2 questions that have really helped me are, why must I get the thing that I want? And what's at stake if I don't? For me, I had to mentor those middle school boys because I didn't see anyone else stepping up to do it. And if nobody else stepped in to mentor them, they would grow into men who had very little character and probably would have caused a lot of hurt. And I couldn't let that happen. And so this was a story I had to step into. But how about you? Why must you get the thing that you want? And what's at stake if you don't? I mean, if the answers to those two questions don't compel you to do something, then you probably need to pick a different story to step into. See, if you want to live a great story, you have to become a character who wants something. In John 10:10, Jesus tells us that he came to give us life. And not just any life, but abundant life, a life of fullness, a life of meaning and purpose. You see, Jesus came so that the story of your life would matter. And as your guide, he has invited you to become a character who wants something.
Welcome back, everybody. We hope you enjoyed that message. It is now time for growth groups, and here are 3 questions that'll help you dive into our material.
Number 1, read John 14:12-14. What problems do you need to start asking Jesus to help you solve?
Number 2, if your life were a movie and Jesus was your guide, what would he tell you about yourself and the story he thinks you should live?
And number 3, on your story card, fill out the a character and who wants something sections. Then talk about your answers with your group.
Tune back in at 2 o'clock for message number 2. Grab some lunch and we'll see you then.